Thanks for watching or listening. If you need someone to talk to about your mental health or you're looking for resources, please DM us at Everyman Patros. You're not in this alone. We love to help. Welcome to the Patros Podcast, a ministry of Man Up. We are excited because this month, May, is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we want to highlight so many different topics when it comes to mental health and how we engage with that as we seek to be biblically healthy men, and masculine health is something that we care about, which part of health is mental health. So as we dive in, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, well, we're happy to bring on a guest.
Yeah.
I would like to say that May is also like spring.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I felt very springy this morning, which is why I wore my fish shirt.
I like that.
It looks amazing.
Yeah. You know, my wife bought me this shirt, and I was like, I'll never wear that. And now I wear it all the time.
I picked up on the theme.
Yeah.
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 Right?
I just, there's something about a turquoise blue with fish that are colored. I don't know. It grew on me, quite literally. Tom, welcome. We're glad to have you, Tom Onley.
Good to be here.
This is exciting. We've been talking about mental health and, you know, kind of what that looks like. And, you know, one of the themes has been for men, mental health is not something that we're comfortable with, despite men being in the word, mental health. And in particular, you know, I think sometimes we just don't even want to recognize it's there. And so then we miss the signs. And so you are part of a mental health first aid. Is it an organization? Is it a program? Or
It's a program. It's the National Institute of Health is involved with it.
Okay.
And but it is a program that originated in Australia. So
Okay.
there's a theme.
Throw another shrimp on
Right.
the bobby.
Right?
We don't go swimming there, though.
And it's just a recognition that people do need sometimes in crisis. They do need somebody who just comes alongside and says, hey, how can I help? How can I get you connected to resources? So it's not therapy. It's not a formal act that somebody who is a professional would do. Anybody can get certified as a mental health first aider.
Okay, awesome.
I like that.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today is kind of recognizing when somebody's in crisis. What are the warning signs? What can we be looking for? And then how is our response? Because I would imagine that makes a difference. There probably can be responses that are harsh. There can be responses that are well-intended, but do the opposite. And then there can be terrible responses. There can be no response. I mean, it's kind of like when someone, this might be a weird analogy, but like when people are in the military and then you hear, I never know what to say.
Yeah.
And so I'm like thinking of something to
Oh,
say.
like, thank you.
And it's usually like,
Yeah.
hey, thank you for your service. And I don't know what else to say. So I don't even know if that's helpful. So we're going to get into that today with you.
Perfect.
But before we do, Tom Onley, man, tell us about you. How do
you land here?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Lived in Florida most of my life. Grew up in Seminole and then moved to Safety Harbor. My wife and I were looking for a place to live. This was about 35 years ago, and recently married, and found a fixer-upper that we've been fixing up for 35 years.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, where else to fix up than Safety Harbor? That's the
Right.
best spot.
That is
And
a great spot.
It started off, it was very small, and it's really grown. So
Yeah,
it's,
I love Safety
it's
Harbor.
a great spot to live.
Yeah, for those who are tuning in, if you ever come to the Tampa area, look us up, but go to Safety Harbor. Just like
Look, go for a walk. I mean, there's no place like that where you could just walk and not have to look over your shoulder all the time.
Yeah. It's nice.
You can just hang out.
it's like a Hallmark town
Literally.
in Florida. Usually they're in the northeast or northwest or something.
I think they've actually used it for a couple of films.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
have.
they
I think
have.
they have. Yeah. So
Yeah. And I've been involved with a local church here for that same amount of time. And am active. I'm a deacon with that church. Awesome. And was involved in teaching in the youth program. I was taught 9th and 10th grade boys. That is quite an experience. If you've not done that, I highly
So
recommend it.
you needed first aid as well.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Now
when I
connecting
started
the dots.
thinking mental health first aid. I think I might need some. But yeah, it's
Awesome.
been a very good experience here and being able to be involved in the community.
Yeah. Tell us about your salvation story. How did you come to faith, and what does that look like?
Sure. So my father was a pastor,
Okay.
and his father was a pastor. So I'm coming from two generations of pastors' kids, and but it's really a true story that everybody has to find their own faith.
Amen.
You're not born into it. That just happened to be what my father was. And at 16 years old, with the counseling from my best friend, I really did dedicate my life to Christ and turn my life around. So you think, grow up in a Christian home, why is that necessary, and why would you learn from your friend? But that was my story, and have been, I'd like to say it was a nice straight path. It was not, but there was a lot that was learned along the way, and married a great girl who also helped me in my faith, and here we go. 62 years old now, and still going strong.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your family.
So I have 6 kids, 2 biological, 2 that I raised after a bit of a crisis in our family.
Okay.
That has influenced my decision to get involved with mental health first aid.
Sure. Okay. Awesome. Well, the podcast, just to frame it up for you and for other folks who may be listening, Patros is the Greek word for father, and but it means way more than father. It's father figure. It's mentor. It's a coach. It's somebody who has wisdom, been around the block, and most importantly is somebody who passes on that wisdom to the next generation. So it's someone who really takes seriously, like 2 Timothy 2:2, where it talks about finding those others, pouring into them, who will then take the message and pour into others. So that's really what, our conviction here is that if men will act like men, as God intended, we won't have fatherless children. Like the fatherless problem would go away. And that is Man Up's goal. Patros being a ministry of Man Up, they all tie together. If every man is a Patros, we'd be in good, good straight. So that Patros is that guy that you kind of look up to, you get advice from him. When it comes to your life, who's a Patros? And even in this area of mental health, because until recently, this has been a big stigma, and I want you to share about that a little bit in the church.
Right.
But who's a Patros in your life?
I would have to say my father, and as I hear other people's stories, other men's stories, I feel more and more blessed to have been raised by a godly father who was active in my life.
That's good.
I feel so fortunate and so blessed. And he grew up in a very tough situation. So his father, as a pastor, really focused mostly on his congregation and lost track of his family. And that's an unfortunate thing that happens in ministry. When I counsel young pastors or men who are looking to get ordained, I tell them my father's story. And I said, he died at 89 of Alzheimer's. He had forgotten everything, including his own name, including me, but he remembered how angry he was at his father.
Wow.
So you cannot lose sight of your own family if you're going to be effective in ministry.
That's so.
That's
man.
So
insane.
he was very much focused on raising his children because he had missed out on that growing up, and he had broken a cycle. And I really thank him for that. Was very much involved. Anything I was into, he was into.
Yeah.
So he was along for the ride, and very much a godly man who gave me some great counsel.
Yeah. But do you have brothers and sisters? Or?
I have 4 sisters. I'm the youngest.
Oh, wow.
There's 8 years between me and my closest sibling. So my mother is a 2-time cancer survivor.
Wow.
And so she's 102 years old.
Get out of town.
So she's just outliving everyone.
Man, I bet she does hard stuff.
Yeah. We had a conversation about I guess there's a part of the brain. I need to just memorize what the part
It's
is.
the OCC.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. I
And
don't know what that stands for.
It grows or shrinks depending on people that challenge themselves. So when you face things that you don't want to do and you do them, it grows, but it's biggest in people that live the longest, and athletes and military, I think.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So my mother was part of the Manhattan Project. And
wow.
so she didn't know which part she was, and she didn't really know that was what she was doing until after the war, and she got a certificate. But she is always pushing the envelope. So at 85 years old, she recognized that nobody was writing her letters, and so Tom, get me a computer. So
She takes initiative.
She just goes. Yep.
Wow. And what was the Manhattan Project? Sorry for my ignorance.
Sure. That was during World War II, and it was the development of the atomic bomb.
Oh, okay. She was part of that?
She was part of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it makes sense why she does hard things probably.
Yeah, she does hard
She
things.
just gets after it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's talk about the as you were growing up, and it's interesting because you're raised in a pastor's home, which is not everybody's experience, but I have found that mental health in the church was really that taboo of all taboos. That we are not talking about this, that you just need to pray more, or everything was spiritualized about, and not to say that there aren't spiritual components to this, I think there are, but it was such a taboo subject. And I'll give you some of my early stories in that, as there was a pastor who will remain nameless, who just obliterated Oprah Winfrey from the stage. And I thought, gosh, that's probably not necessary. I mean, I kind of agreed with what he was saying, but it was like probably not necessary. The next week, he comes back and obliterates anybody who's on an antidepressant.
Ooh.
And I'm like, and my wife, who has been on antidepressants off and on ever since I've known her, was just like checked out. And we still went to that church for a while, but not much longer, because she couldn't respect anything that he said. And so that's my experience. What has been your experience, like personal experience with mental health in the church?
Yeah, same. And one of the groups that I do the mental health first aid training for is faith-based communities. And so I've been to churches, Seventh-day Adventist church, Methodist church, Baptist church. So I've been in a couple of different communities of faith and Christian faith. And it's a common story.
Wow.
Where it's, if you've got problems, you just need to pray more.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, shaming somebody who is seeking some type of counseling. And especially for those that need those meds in order to be okay. Sometimes it's brain chemistry.
Yeah.
You can't pray away brain chemistry.
Yeah.
And depression is one of them. And so I've heard that story over and over, and I really praise pastors who take a stand and just say, nope, it's real. There are times where you do need help, and not taking those meds would be like not taking you have an infection, you want to take an antibiotic.
Yeah.
And if you've got something in your brain that needs to have an extra chemical in order for it to work properly, take it.
Yeah. Is that part of the crisis? Because I mean, I think we would all agree, if we can, whatever the med is, if we can find a natural way to, get the same result, it's probably better. You know, I don't know. Maybe most people don't think that. I tend to think that. But just in general, I'm wondering how long, or when it comes to a crisis, is that part of the process for somebody in crisis, is needing to be on medication from time to time,
like stabilize them?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the advice from most professionals would be, what can you do for self-care first? So do you have your life right? Are you eating right? Are you exercising? Do you have balance? And that's always a good starting place. Have you been to the doctor? There are times where there are psychiatric reactions, and it turns out you've got you've got a urinary tract infection. So sometimes you just need to make sure that you're right, and then you kind of work your way down. So the first step wouldn't be, let's prescribe everybody antidepressants. The first step is just be healthy. Yep. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Community, faith, all those things that benefit.
That's very important.
In your experience, what are the root causes of depression? I think because depression and anxiety are so prevalent these days. Allan's wife is a therapist. What does she see, Allan?
As a counselor, she can't tell me about her patients, but
We know.
Yeah.
HIPAA violations.
Right.
Just give me general.
But no, she does see a ton of anxiety, ton of depression. And I mean, really, a lot of counselors are going to see mostly that unless you're specialized in like schizophrenia, bipolar. I mean, you will run into that and see that. But for counseling, she does run into the most prevalent, probably. Yeah.
Are those things?
Well, I think that's the things that people have underlying the most that they don't even realize.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's the root cause? What are we talking about?
Well, sometimes it's chemical, and sometimes it's there are some biological indicators, and so you might be predisposed towards certain ways of reacting to circumstances. So that might create. And sometimes it's some type of crisis that's triggered that event for you. So it might show up as a panic attack. That might be the early indication that something is happening. So there's a number of things that can kind of start you down that path. And if life takes a hard turn, that really is going to surface something. It's going to show how well are you able to cope. And a lot of it is just measured by coping. So as your ability to cope decreases, or if you start to lean into coping things like alcohol and drugs.
I was just about to ask about alcohol, because alcohol is a depressant.
Yes.
And so we're surprised that people are depressed when you're drinking depressants every day.
Right. They're doing what they can.
Yeah.
So they're taking things that are available to them to try to feel okay.
To medicate, self-medicate.
Yep.
Okay.
Self-medicating. Right.
Is there a thought on like this next generation, because they actually are drinking less alcohol than any other generation. They're doing less risky behavior, but yet there's still this high level of anxiety and depression. Is it due to like they're shot on dopamine because of video games and screen time and stuff like that, or
Social
what?
media?
That's a big part of it. Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah, I was reading a book recently, and especially the early introduction of screen time.
Oh yeah, because at like infancy, people are showing screens.
It's not a great start, and you're just not really ready to handle the kind of comparison that happens on social media. So the book was The Most Anxious Generation, and the idea is that you're comparing yourself to somebody's curated life. And you're thinking, I can't measure up. So it makes it tough. I'm glad I never had to deal with that.
We have too much access to
it's too easy. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think I had a friend that told me, he was like, what if we stop telling people how poor they are? Would people maybe just be like, yeah, this is just my life?
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess there's obviously a level where that's not going to fix anything. But there is a level where perceived poverty isn't always poor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that can cause depression in somebody.
That can
feel like
really.
a failure.
And then you're chasing after whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which might actually put you deeper into debt, deeper into depression.
I think I did see something about like the correlation between suicide. That there was a correlation between that and not necessarily how much they made, but that they lived amongst people that made more than them, typically. So that makes a lot of sense that you say that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although suicide affects
every
everybody. Socioeconomic level. It knows plays no favorites.
Yeah.
So it somebody who's experiencing something that feels overwhelming
deeply,
to them,
yeah.
then they get to the point where they feel like it's the last choice, the only choice available to me, and then that crisis is something that really does need to be addressed. That's where you're calling 988, 911, whatever that is, in order to help that person to say, I'm feeling out of control. I need somebody to talk to. And most of the time, if you can intervene in that crisis moment, that person's going to be okay.
Wow.
So for most people, it's a one-time thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you want to dive into like triage stuff?
Well, hold on. I want to circle back to the panic attack.
Yeah.
You said panic attacks are what oftentimes it's kind of a first symptom. My wife has experienced panic attacks. I've seen them firsthand. I know what they look like. I never experienced it before then. And I don't think I have experienced one, except for maybe my first triathlon when I was in the water.
Oh,
I think
that's your closest to a panic attack.
I think that's the closest to a panic attack that I've had, because I literally just got to a point where it's almost like I forgot how to swim, and I thought I was going to drown. And I remember looking around for help, and all I saw was other panicked faces. I'm like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And the kayak guy, I wasn't even looking for her. My mind wasn't. So that's the only thing but panic attacks in general, what do they look like? Because, part of what you do is kind of recognizing that.
Yeah.
So what are those? What do they look like? What's going on?
Sure. And a lot of times a panic attack will show up. First, it's racing thoughts.
Okay.
And you start to you get into that negative death spiral of thoughts, and so it's like, if I do this, then this is going to happen, and then if this happens, then this is going to happen, and it goes from, typically there's some kind of a trigger that's in reality, but then it just starts to build more and more. That your body reacts to that, because your body doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. It's just getting those signals, and so your breath becomes shorter. You start to sweat. And a lot of times people will experience it like a heart attack. So their chest constricts, all the things that are common to heart attacks. And often people will go to the emergency room thinking, I'm having a heart attack.
It was actually a panic attack.
And it was actually a panic
So
attack.
if like, let's say you're with somebody that has a panic attack, and let's say they're not your spouse, like you don't necessarily have any power of attorney or anything like that to be able to help, like, what do you do?
Just say, the first thing is, it looks like you're having a hard time. Can I help? And
That's simple.
just simple. And they're like, no, I'm okay. And it's like, well, have you had this before? So a lot of times people will have a pattern of this, and it's like, yes, I have. And then it's like, okay, do you want to breathe together? And a lot of times just a good box breathing, or the breathing where you're controlling in, hold, out, hold, will help to bring that anxiety level down enough and to feel more in control and get more oxygen to your brain.
Is it like a psychological thing of like they're controlling their breath, so they're focusing on something
They're focusing on the breath.
Okay.
You can focus on, touch your fingers, look around, identify some things. So it's just getting out of your head and being connected to the physical world.
Okay. Wow.
And so I have seen my wife do
Do
this.
that?
Yeah.
And then I know that in that moment, like, okay, she's starting. That's usually when
grounding, is that what it's called?
Yeah, grounding.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually when I pray.
Yeah.
Because
Good
I
start.
don't know what else to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't taken the training.
Yeah.
But I do know that breathing is, we do, we have cold plunge at the house. And so, when you step into cold water, immediately
It causes cortisol to spike. And
you don't have your breath.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got that 30 seconds or so to get that breath under control. Once you get your breath under control, the body
follow.
is like, okay,
Yeah.
we can do this. I can be in this cold water.
Yep.
But if you don't get that breath under control, also you're almost hyperventilating,
Right.
and so it's like getting out of that spiral, right? And so that's what the breathing does.
Right. And hyperventilating is also a risk too. So you get to the point where you don't have enough oxygen and you can pass out.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
and it all begins with circular anxious thoughts.
Yeah. And you said, and I've experienced this firsthand, that usually there's a trigger. And with triggers, what I've come to realize is that you never know when they're coming. At least for a lot of us. Like, all of a sudden something happens. You're watching a show, and then something
Boom.
and you're like, and you can't get away from it. You're just trying to watch a show, or
Right.
you're just hanging out. Someone says something in a
It's
conversation.
like a gun misfire. Like, it was just like, whoa.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, do you have any takes on that? Like, because knowing that triggers can kind of come from anywhere, what's the best defense or preparation for when that moment happens?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's just identifying early that you're starting to go into a panic attack. So the quicker that you can intervene and kind of learn that about yourself, the better.
Okay.
Because you're right, everybody's going to have different triggers, and something could trigger you just out of the blue. So you just early identification, and then the breathing, and prayer is also, if you think about how meditative prayer is,
Yeah.
you're calm, you're focused on something other than your negative thoughts. Bible verses, that's a great way to do that. If you've got them memorized, you can pull on scripture. It's very powerful.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between men and women. because my guess is that women respond to this differently than men. But maybe I'm wrong about that. So do you find differences in the gender, or?
Women are more apt to look for support.
Okay.
And men are more likely to say, I got this.
Try to white knuckle.
But John Wayne it.
Yeah, I got this. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Fine. And when I do the mental health training, I say fine is freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Oh,
so
okay.
So you might say you're fine. Chances are you're
hit him right in the
fine.
chest.
Yeah, you're like, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Wow. Do you see a lot of, because there's an artist that I listened to that he opened up about this, and it was like he was driving and there wasn't a trigger, but he went into a panic attack and then started learning about the body keeping a score.
Yeah.
Do you see that happen a lot with men because of the fact that we don't always want to engage our thoughts?
Right. And they're like, and I'm not sure why it is. I'm a man, so I'm in the middle of it too. But the body definitely keeps a score, and
it'll just say, "Hey, enough is enough.
Yep.
We're crying."
Yep. You pull off to the side, and you don't even understand why. But and sometimes it's unresolved panic that comes from some type of a crisis that happened in your life that you didn't resolve, and all of a sudden it just bubbles up.
Wow.
Yeah. So panic attacks, early signs. Let's go past that. So where does that transition then into other disorders, patterns of thinking, and then maybe like official diagnoses?
Yeah. So and in the training, what we'll do is we focus on early signs and symptoms, worsening signs and symptoms, and crisis.
Okay.
And so often people will go 10 years before getting help. They'll just try to figure it out. They self-medicate. They're able to cope enough in their life that they're not seeking help, but then they get to a point where things have really deteriorated, and that could show up in a number of different things. It can show up in compulsive behavior, eating disorders,
relational problems, whatever it is.
Relational problems, trouble at work, not maintaining good hygiene. So all of those things are kind of outward indications that something internally is really happening. And then it could be, and you see this more in younger populations, especially girls, but cutting is one, the non-suicidal self-injury. Yeah. So those are all things that are, you're trying to cope with the feelings that you don't know how to deal with. And so you're looking for some relief from that.
Is it easier to see signs in men or women, or do you, sir?
It's so specialized, it's so specific to individuals that you almost have to get a sense for, I see this person now, I see them 2 weeks from now, they look worse. So it's but now sometimes you see somebody and something just really is off. You can really tell that they're in crisis.
Well, because I mean, you hear this often where someone does commit suicide and everybody's shocked.
Yeah.
You know, so
like never them. I wouldn't have thought.
Right. Sometimes sometimes it's not there. The signs are not there as well. So can you speak to a little bit about that too? Because you said you got kind of the early signs, then hey, this is worsening, and now we're in crisis. Well, do those early signs, I would guess, then are almost uber important, because you got to be picking up on those before it does get to that.
Yeah, and sometimes somebody is even seeking help, and it's just not, they haven't quite figured out what exactly that help needed to be, and that person reaches a crisis point. But a lot of times I'll hear from somebody that says, I would have never expected, I didn't see any signs, but now that person did make an attempt on their life or did kill themselves, I could see that there were some things that
people missed.
And they're like, now I can see it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but there's no guarantees. Somebody could be in a psychiatric facility and be watched by people who are professionals, and somebody will still make an attempt on their life. So, but in most cases, you can intervene. In most cases, you can say, hey, it looks like I've heard enough things that you've said that I'm now concerned enough. And there's 3 questions that you can ask them.
Okay.
Question number 1 is, are you thinking of killing yourself? The second question is, have you taken the steps you need in order to prepare on how you're going to kill yourself? So do you have a plan, and have you made a decision to do that? And then the third question is, I'm going to call somebody. Is there somebody that I can call? And whether or not they say yes or no, you're calling for support, because that person is in crisis and needs help. 911, 988, either of those numbers are crisis support.
Okay. So that's good, right? It's like if you're in crisis, because that's really what this podcast is about. Hey, what can we do?
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is if it gets to that point where you've noticed that, and now it's, and I guess it's noticeable because, like, what would make it super noticeable?
I was about to ask, like,
Yeah.
can you, goes with your question.
Yeah.
Crisis doesn't always look bad.
Right.
Like, some people, when they commit suicide, are actually extremely positive right before their suicide attempt. Like, where everybody's like, oh, you had a breakthrough. You're super happy right now.
Yeah.
Everything's positive. So can you kind of go into, like, how to identify crisis?
Yeah, and sometimes somebody's relieved that they've made their
decision.
plan up,
Yeah.
and now instead
start
of being
hugging
depressed,
people.
they're like, okay, now I feel relieved because I'm going to do it.
So everybody's like, oh, you had breakthrough. We're all good. Don't worry about them.
And that could
it's
be-
actually the opposite.
Yeah, that could be a real warning sign.
Okay.
Yeah, but I used to, you'll hear people joke and they'll say, I'm so mad I could kill myself, or I'm so frustrated I could kill myself. And when somebody does that, I'll challenge them. I'll say, okay, don't joke about that, because I want to take that seriously. So are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made a plan? And they're like, no, I'm just joking. I say, well, let's joke about something else, because it's one of those things. It's a rare enough thing, but especially with youth, it's like the number 2 killer.
Yeah.
So you've got risky behavior and accidents is number 1, and suicide is number 2.
No way.
And it's across all parts of society. Nobody is free from that. You'll see somebody. How many times this person has everything going for them, and then you find out that they killed themselves.
Yeah. And I would imagine too, like, a lot of this stems from, I would imagine, without being an expert in this, but it stems from a lack of connection or lack of community or lack of meaning or purpose. Like, how much does family life, and in particular, because this is what we deal with, fatherlessness, how much does that play a role in this?
Question.
That's certainly a risk factor.
Yeah.
So if you're already feeling like nobody loves you, or if there's a particular person in your life that you feel just isn't there for you, that puts you at risk for sure.
Yeah. And when we think about the church, and its role in all of this, how can the church do better? How can the church respond to this? What are I know you said you trained some of those churches. What are some of those teaching points, and just in general, your thoughts on, like, hey, church, we can do better?
Yeah. Well, and when I'm talking to churches, people in churches, leaders, whether they're lay leaders or they're on staff, I'll say to them, you have these AEDs all over the church. So you recognize that people have heart attacks. I said, you need to also equip people around that can recognize somebody who might be in crisis and just come up beside them and say, hey, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
So just being more sensitive to the fact that Jesus is the answer, but there are also other answers too. So there may be times where that person needs to take that person aside, talk to them, listen to what some of their needs might be. I think that would be good. And that's true of any leader in any church, whether you're teaching preschool or you have an adult class or you're working in the all around the campus, and you just see somebody who's kind of sitting over in the corner looking sad. Those are all opportunities to just reach out to somebody and to say, are you okay?
Are you okay? Which really, like, as believers, this is what we should be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You would think that our behavior would be different from the world, that we would not be as selfish, and that we would take an interest in others. But personally, I'm probably guilty of this, and I think this is a challenge. Having my wife as my wife has been the greatest thing for me in developing empathy. Because I remember early on, I just didn't get it. And I kind of thought she was faking, like if I'm being honest. And then the more we went on, the more I saw her desire. I really saw her desire to be better. But there was something holding her back. And she needed a breakthrough of some kind, but she couldn't get there. And she had the desire. And I remember thinking, because she would try to wean herself off medications and then she'd have, some kind of incident. And I just remember going back, like that alone for me was like, you know what, babe? Yeah, just keep taking it. You don't need to take yourself off the dosage. I know you don't want to be on it. I know you don't want to be hooked on it, but your body needs it right now. Your brain needs it right now. Just that's making you healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is a real tendency because some of my kids were on medication, are on medication, and it's so important for them to be able to stay level, and all of them are thinking, okay, so I'm going to do this for now, but then I want to wean myself off. I'm like, why? If it's helping you, if you need it. One of my sisters is bipolar, and she spent 10 years trying to get the mix just right. Yeah. Because that's another thing about meds. It's like you take a magic pill. So you're like, take this, take that. It's always a combination of things. And she finally did get that right, but it's not easy to get that brain chemistry. So if you find something that works, stick with it.
Well, you know what's interesting is, so she was part of her anxiety. We realized was an OCD thing. And so she would be just obsessive about certain things, and that was actually producing the anxiety. So it wasn't an anxiousness about it. Was just like, I think you mentioned earlier about thoughts.
It grows as you focus on it.
Yeah, and it was just like running through. And so she actually started taking something for ADD. And she made the comment the other day, she's like, this is like a super drug. She's like, so to your point about finding that combination, my wife and I have been married now 23 years. We're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably an important message too, is that it's not a quick fix all the time. I mean, you can have Christ in your life. You can be reading your Bible like she does, and you can be praying. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're all of a sudden just quote unquote fixed.
Right. That happens in heven.
The glorified body.
That we're not going to get to experience that for a bit. So hopefully, it is very important to be able to just recognize that. Just keep trying, and if something's not working, try something else.
What do you wish you would have known earlier in your life about mental health and kind of its destruction or potential for destruction?
And I'll speak as a father. So one of the things that you think as a father is that you can fix anything, that you can rise to the occasion, and that your measure of success as a father is
super dad.
I make everything okay. And the thing I wish I knew is like that's arrogant. And it's like there are times that you need to reach out to other men, you need to reach out for support, and recognize that you don't have all the answers. It's a hard lesson learned, and it's something I learn new every day.
So you kind of touched on it there. What can men be proactively doing? And it's kind of, we can go anyway with this, but like proactively doing in their own lives, but then also proactive in the lives of their loved ones, so that they are, and to your point, we do think we need to be super dad. We do think that everything, we've got it all together. And the reality is, I think, we talk about this a lot, and this is my thing, maybe not I talk about it, and everybody has to talk about it because I'm talking about it. But I think when you look at the differences between men and women, the primary difference for me is physical strength. Like, that's the biggest thing. I'm anatomically have more muscle fiber, I have more testosterone. Like, I can do things to pick up. I can pick up heavy things.
Yes, I pick up heavy things.
Yeah, and it's like super meathead, but it's like, that's the reality. Like when my wife tells me, hey, can you move this over there? I know she can't do it. Or maybe she could, but it's going to be really hard, and I'm stronger. So I feel useful.
Yes.
When she asks me to pick up heavy things, like, yes, finally, like something is paying off. Like all those hours in the gym are paying off in this one moment where my wife needs me.
I will get that heavy thing.
Yeah.
I got it for you. But because of that, we have this innate protector provider instinct in us, right? I want to protect my family. I want to provide for their safety. I want to make sure that they're okay. And as the physically stronger one, if there's a threat that comes in those two doors, I know it's on me. Like I'm going to be the one who's going to step up, and I want to do that.
Right.
And so I think because of that, I think that translates over into the mental health field. I got it. I can handle it. But that's a totally separate thing when you're talking about the development of a mental health. So,
Well, because you can't fix people's mental health with brute force.
they let
You
me
need-
punch you in the face.
Which I guess maybe is
I feel
why.
sad. Here, let me lift you.
That's great.
Do you feel better now?
Yeah. How do you
And
feel
is
about it?
that why the space is so, like, not feminine, but like predominantly women are the ones engaging in a lot of these conversations?
I think so. And
That's feminine.
And one of the things.
Yeah,
that,
but I'm not saying that mental health is feminine.
I know.
Right. Right. No, I think that, and men, one of the traps you can fall into is that I'll just let my wife deal with it. Right. Here's this tough
You let her
conversation.
spiritually lead. And,
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like no, you need to step up into that space, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. You can listen. You can hold somebody when they cry. Those don't require a great amount of strength, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe we've done a poor job of explaining what strength is. And that strength is being able to sit there and be there for people.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, I don't know why it's so insanely difficult for us. I think a lot of it has to do with our relationship with our dads, honestly, because you can have a functionally fatherless home, or you can have a fatherless home, but that ability to express emotion, that ability to connect with another man, to this day, I mean, my dad was a good man. He loved Jesus. He had a tough time expressing his love. Came across as, if I do good, you love me. If I don't, you scold me. I don't think he wanted to do that, looking back.
Right.
But growing up, that's what it felt like.
Right.
So that was the reality, right? I'm only loved if I perform well. And
Which is a lot of weight to hold as a child.
it's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a tender guy, right? Which is actually interesting because he sometimes was a blubbering mess. Like he'd cry and stuff like that. But it always felt like it was out of like, oh, I'm a failure as a father, Like it wasn't like crying out of like, let me like connect with you on a sad level. It was more like self-pity. So I never really, I always look, this is therapy for me right now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You want me to leave?
How does that make you feel?
does that make me feel sad, Tom? Sad.
We're about to witness Jeff's
Can you
first
hold
panic
me?
attack.
Can you pick me up?
I can pick you up. With
That's
some help.
the
With some help.
the name of the title is gonna be Jeff's first panic attack.
Yeah, I've now had it. But I mean, I'm just thinking like that relationship with dad is so important in developing all of these things, and I just think a lot of us are missing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I felt very fortunate to have a father who was okay with that, okay with emotion. But there's a lot of men that grow up that just don't have that. They don't have a role model for it, and there's just not a space for it. And they're kind of expected, don't cry. Boys don't cry.
Yeah.
And that's the root of a lot of mental illness that shows up later. You hear about toxic masculinity, and some of it is that.
Yeah.
It's just feeling emotions that you just don't know how to deal with.
Yeah.
Have we just also done a poor job of like teaching or discipling men in the balance between also holding that cry in, right? Like, because I think sometimes I see stuff on Instagram all the time, like men cry, but then you almost get like where you cry too much.
Yeah.
And it's like learning, hey, there's space and time where you can't put your crying on your wife all the time because she can't bear that. So what would you coach someone in that balance?
Well, first of all, I think it's just being connected to your emotions.
Okay.
So emotions are going to show up in however they show up. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's frustration, sometimes it's sadness. So it's just being connected and recognizing, hey, I can feel my emotions, and that's okay. And you don't necessarily have to express those
Or avoid them.
It just recognize them, and sometimes it's okay just to sit in an emotion and just kind of let it wash over you to see, all right, what is happening here, and then put a name to it. That can help you, and then what's causing that. So those are all kind of ways to intellectualize it a little bit, but it at least allows you to put a name to it. It's like, what is happening here? What's causing this? And if it's something that requires further conversation, maybe set up some time, maybe some counseling to just talk through some of the things that you're expressing. It doesn't necessarily mean you're in for a life of mental health counseling. You're going to go to a psychologist. It's just sometimes it's just a good idea. Go for a couple of sessions and just talk about some things that you're feeling.
Can we talk about that? Like I don't know how much
your
longer.
feelings.
Yeah. Well. Maybe not. I'm just kidding. But like, so you have triage or first aid,
right?
And then you do a handoff.
Yep.
And one thing that we see a lot is in that handoff process, like I've sent friends to counselors, or I've advised friends to go to counselors, and then they'll kind of go rogue, and then they have an awful experience with a person they found on Google.
Yeah.
And that one time is enough to make it to where they're never trying again, because they just spent $120 something for an hour where it was just awful.
Yeah.
So how do you advise and coach people in that process when they hand someone off to like find the right person? Yeah, discovery and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just continue to encourage them. Don't give up. It's like you might go to a restaurant and get a bad meal. Just don't go back to that restaurant. But don't stop eating
food.
Don't stop eating.
That's good. Yeah. That's a bar. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just keep trying, because some counseling is better than none, especially if you're in crisis. So, there's I read this crazy book by a comedian, and what she was saying was just keep trying, and she goes, just go to a church. Sometimes you just walk into a church and somebody will be nice to you, and if they're not, go to a different church. So just keep trying until you get your needs met, and then hopefully you can find something that works. Because there's no perfect counselors either.
Yeah.
You might have the best one ever, and they're having an off day.
I like that.
And I think it's important to note that you're not alone. This is common, right?
We're all messed up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 1 in 5 people at any time in their life, 1 in 5 people is involved in some type of mental health crisis.
Wow.
So there's a chance that somebody in this room is in their lives or in those who are close to you.
Yeah.
There's having some kind of a mental health crisis, and it could be a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many different things happening. Financial crises can push you over the top. A lot of things happening in the stock market right now. I'm sure there's a few people feeling a little anxious about that.
Yeah, for sure. I just I'm a counselor, but in counseling and coaching and mentoring dudes for the last 15, 18 years, I've seen just so many guys who have given up on their marriage or given up on their family or given up because they didn't keep trying, and they felt like this is it. This is all I have to offer. And so I love that advice of like, don't give up, like go to the next church, go, keep digging in, because eventually you're going to find, and God is going to, like, something's going to spark in your spirit, and you'll be like, oh wait, I'm connecting here. I'm resonating with what's being said.
And what you'll find is that the more that you try, the more you learn. And all of a sudden you become an expert. It's like, I didn't set out to become an expert, but because of my own journey, now I am.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge. If that helps to continue to feel motivated to seek, but you're now mastering it.
So let's just kind of wrap here with, if someone wants to do what you've done, and they want to become a mental health first aid, is it a practitioner? Not practitioner, but
just a mental health first aider, certified mental health first aider.
Certified. So what's that process? What do they got to do?
You can look up mental health first aid, and you can find a class.
Okay.
There are classes that are offered in the community the majority of the ones that I'm involved in are covered by a grant through St. Pete College, but there are a number of people who are doing that, and you can seek it out. It's a 7-hour-long course, and there's a test at the end, but you'll pass. I know you will, because you're smart.
He believes in you.
Yes, I believe in you. And and then hopefully that begins the process of just a life of curiosity about it.
Yeah.
Because you'll never learn it all. People are super complex.
Yeah.
But it's a good starting place, and it gives you some very good practical tools.
Yeah. So just Google mental health first aid, and I'm assuming that'll come right up for us.
It'll come right up for you.
Awesome.
Mental health first aid.
Awesome. Tom, thanks.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time. It's been a good hour. Hopefully we learned something today.
I definitely did. That was awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for joining us on this episode of the Patros Podcast. Let's keep learning about mental health.